Hello there, good evening, and welcome to the Football Tribe YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in from wherever it is that you're watching this. This is the first weekend of the 2023-2024 Premier League season without action in a weekend. Well, it's the international break, usually fortnights along as players go back to their respective international teams or national teams to play for them. In Europe, it's the Euro qualifiers that are ongoing, while for Africa, it's been the AFCON qualifiers that are going on in preparation for the Euro 2024 that will be hosted in Germany, while on the Black Continent, it will be AFCON 2023 that will be played in Ivory Coast. So that's what's happening this weekend, but I thought we should touch base and review the Premier League after 4 games played, but vis-a-vis predictions from early on in the season. Remember, a lot of those were some of those were subject to change since before the transfer window could end. Now, the transfer window has since shut down in Europe and across most leagues across the world. I think it was Saudi Arabia and in Turkey where their windows were further extended. But let's divulge into all that and see where it leaves us. What teams have impressed us the most, what teams have had a slow start to the season, and those that have perhaps disappointed us in one way or the other. So, I will begin this by reminding you what some of our predictions were for the 2023-2024 campaign. As I predicted, I tipped Arsenal to win the Premier League title, to be followed by Manchester City, Manchester United in third place, Liverpool to follow in fourth, Chelsea fifth, Brighton sixth, Tottenham in seventh, Aston Villa in eighth, while Newcastle 9 and Brentford at 10. And for the relegation, our predictions were Nottingham Forest for 18th, Sheffield United 19th, and Luton Town to finish bottom. But so far, after 4 games played, there have been quite a number of mishaps in those predictions, not on the overall of how it will span out by the end of the season, but in terms of our expectations for the opening 4 games. Manchester City have been more than impressive for their start. It's 4 wins in 4, as one would expect them to perform. I mean, everybody is trying to match them or challenge them, having won the treble last season. So it's been 4 wins in 4 for the citizens there, beating up against Burnley, Newcastle, Sheffield United, and Fulham by 3-0, 1-0, 2-1, and 5-1, respectively, in their opening 4 fixtures. Remember, we predicted them to finish second, but they are increasingly looking like they could defend their title. But the season is a marathon, anything can happen. In the absence of Kevin De Bruyne, they've been more impressive, even as if they do not need him. The likes of Rodri have stepped up, Erling Haaland, and the likes. Phil Foden in that Newcastle game was quite impressive. So, City have had a flying start to the season. Now, Arsenal are currently 5th on that Premier League table, having registered 3 victories and 1 draw in the opening 4 Premier League games of the seasons. This is the team I predicted to win the Premier League title by the end of the campaign in May next year. But whereas they've recorded 3 wins out of 4, the start to the season has been underwhelming in my view, in the way they've applied themselves in terms of that electric, attacking football that we're accustomed of them from the previous season. Not that they've not been dominant in their play, they've been quite dominant in most of their games, except that of Manchester United, which they still managed to win. But in the way they've applied themselves generally, the triggering of the system there has made them look less warming than we had hoped for. But nonetheless, they've managed to put the results on board. Like I said, 3 victories out of 4 with 1 draw. Also, the results are good. Beating up against Nottingham Forest by 2-1, Crystal Palace by 0-0, before sharing the spoils with Fulham 2-2, and then beating up against Manchester United by 3-1, a result that I thought was quite flattering for the Gunners. And if you share a similar view, you can check out our last video in review of that match on the channel. So they've had a fair share of their bad luck with long-term injuries to, for example, Urian Timber, who is literally out for the rest of the season. He could come back maybe in March or April, but you never know how those long-term injuries could go. They've had to start the season without Gabriel Jesus, who has since returned from injury. They've then suffered an injury to Thomas Partey, who missed the game against Manchester United, having suffered a groin injury that has not yet been defined for how long it will keep him out of action, but speculation still estimates between 6 to 8 weeks there. That's approximately 1.5 to 2 months. So, but that's Arsenal in 50, collecting 10 points out of a possible 12. Manchester City have maximum points, 12 out of 12. And yet we expect Arsenal to win that title. If they continue with the way they've started the season, well, it may dent their title hopes because they've struggled to beat against sides like Crystal Palace. They did struggle a bit in that Fulham game despite dominating play. Against Manchester United, they struggled to create, plenty of chances that we've come to know of them in terms of creating. Moving on, in number 3, we predicted it will be Manchester United, but things are not looking likely. In fact, in all my predictions, if I were to swap positions, I think I would swap Liverpool to finish 3rd instead of Manchester United and then drop Manchester United down to 4th. They've had an unconvincing start to the Premier League season, despite recording 2 victories in their opening 4 games and losing 2, beating up against Wolves by 0-0 and beating up against Nottingham Forest by 3-2, but losing to Spurs by 2-0 and to Arsenal by 3-1. Now, one would expect that losing to Arsenal isn't a strange result to happen to Manchester United, and even losing to Tottenham away from home isn't another strange result to happen. Yes, you could be right. But my point is, it is not the Manchester United that we know. They have not started the season like the Manchester United that we want them to be or want them to be for the last many decades. So, they struggled in that 1-0 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers, Rafael Varane scoring late in the 76th minute of that game. Then they had to go 2-0 down in the opening 4 minutes at home against Nottingham Forest before coming, those 2 goals down to win it 3-2, for which they needed a penalty to even score that 3rd goal. So that's the kind of team that represented of themselves this season. I've thought that they have been unconvincing in their victories and in their losses in the way they applied themselves. Now, it has come at a time when they had quite a number of injuries. The likes of Luke Shaw, some games where he had started the season, Rasmus Højlund, Tyler Malacia, all those players are out injured. And it is reported that Sofian Amrabat, who they signed late on in the window, that's on deadline day, also came with an injury. So we still don't know how long he'll be out, but we hope that on the return of the fixtures come next weekend, maybe he could be available or not so far from being available to play. Then comes the bombshell of the exchange between Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho, which is a public affair now, that I do not think is good for the team either. So, Rafael Varane also found himself being added on that injury list. Lisandro Martinez had to be withdrawn in that Arsenal game, as well as Victor Lindelof due to suspected injuries. We hope those will return back in due time for them to carry on for Manchester United, but some long-term injuries there. Not so long-term, but at least when you look at the scope of things, especially the fixtures they have to cover in September and in October. Remember, Champions League comes back in this month, so they could miss a number of games in a short space of time. including Mason Mount, the summer signing there. So Manchester United have had quite a number of injuries to contend with. So you sort of cut them some slack in terms of judging them by the results they put on paper, but in terms of how they applied themselves on the field, the way they've attained the results they've attained, and the way they've lost matches they've lost, there are quite a number of question marks in there. Perhaps against Arsenal, you'd think they did apply themselves well in terms of holding their shape and being well organized in defense, although they lost their footing late on in the game. But you'd forgive them for that part. But generally, something needs to click in that team and we have them going. Moving on to Liverpool, who we predicted to finish fourth this season. Now, Liverpool have had an impressive start to the Premier League season, far from what we, or perhaps I, had expected they would start with. First of all, they went away and shared the spoils with Chelsea on match day 1. That's a 1-1 all draw. Went ahead and beat up against Newcastle by 2-1 when they were down to 10 men for the better part of the game. So they were quite impressive on that. They followed that with a 3-1 win against Bournemouth and then beat up against Aston Villa by 3-0. So 10 points for Jurgen Klopp's side. And I think that has been quite impressive given the changes they've had to undergo through, especially in their midfield. Dominic Szoboszlai has been quite a liberation of a signing for the Reds there. Luis Diaz has had, an impressive start to the campaign. And Darwin Núñez has also not disappointed for the chances he's been given to come onto the turf there. So, you look at them overall, despite that lookingly shaky defense, they've been quite impressive beyond our expectations, especially in the start of the campaign. As you already know, Virgil van Dijk has been suspended for an extra game for that red card that he received against Newcastle, having uttered words towards the referee on the day, and has also been fined about, I think, £100,000. So, but be that of it may, they've still managed to hold shape with Joe Gomez, in that back line, and they've been quite good. Remember, they have an injury with Ibrahim Konate, but they've managed to handle themselves well. The midfield of McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, for which they've added on Wataru Endo there onto that midfield to further strengthen it. I think they will perform much better. They've also added on Gravenberch from Bayern Munich. So Brian Gravenberch did join them late on in the window, so he will be part of that midfield as they go to the Europa League this month. So, but overall in the Premier League, I think they've done quite well for the start of the campaign. Moving on, in number 5, we did expect Chelsea to finish 5th. Now, early signs have no indication that they will finish 5th, but all hope is not lost. Now, remember, Chelsea is largely dominated with a new team, new members of the squad. Most of them have barely spent a year and a half at the club. Those that are playing, those that are starting. You look at the goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez, summer signing. You look at Malo Gusto, he's just come from Lyon. You look at that centre back, I think it's Thiago Silva, one of the old agents there. You look at Richie James, now injured, Ben Chilwell, maybe one of the old lads. But when you look at the entire team in midfield, Enzo Fernandez, January signing from this year. You look at Moises Caicedo, just been signed this summer. Romeo Lavia, who is yet to even kick a ball for them, is injured. So you look at, on the other side, Raheem Sterling was signed last summer. Nicholas Jackson signed this summer. So you look at that whole team is yet to gel together to play as one team. So they've had a disappointing start to the season, in my view, collecting only 4 points from a possible 12. That's a draw against Liverpool, a 3-0 win against Luton Town, but then losing out against a team like Nottingham Forest on match day 4 by a goal to nil. But they also did lose to West Ham by 3-1 on match day 3. So those are the results they managed to put on board. Now, only where I disagree or where I find them quite very, very poor is in that 1-0 result against Nottingham Forest. Not that it is strange for Nottingham Forest to beat up against a big side, because they did beat up against Arsenal by a goal to nil in May, for an Arsenal side that was even chasing the title. So it's not too strange, but the way Chelsea lost that game, and given that they were at home, you'd have expected more, even in their posted or in their lack of, look of things. So, but I do think in the long run, Mauricio Pochettino will be able to galvanize that team and get good results out of them. So, my prediction is still that they'll finish as high as 5th or at worst maybe 6th this season. They have no duties on the continent in terms of Europa League or UEFA Conference League or Champions League, so they'll be committed to the domestic cups. Remember, Pochettino has already announced that he wants to win it all: the Premier League, the FA, the Carabao Cup. So, wait to see. Then in number 6, we had Brighton and Hove Albion. These have also had an impressive start to the season. They are playing exciting football. Despite that hiccup, a 3-1 loss to West Ham, a game in which they were still quite impressive, although they couldn't, make their chances count. So they've gathered 4-1 results twice, and then beat up against Newcastle there by 3-1. They did beat up against Wolves by 4-1. So very, very impressive. They beat up against Luton Town by 4-1. And then on match day 3, lost to West Ham 3-1, and then went on to beat Newcastle by 3-1. So Roberto De Zerbi has been impressive with his team, and I think they will continue to be impressive. Their next game will come against Manchester United. So United should worry for themselves, because on a good day, Brighton can beat on any other side in that Premier League group. So impressive start for them, just as much as Tottenham on the other side, who have managed to record 3 victories and 1 draw. That's the draw against Brentford. Ange Postecoglou guiding his team to a 2-0 victory against Manchester United, as well as Bournemouth, before beating up against Burnley by 5-2. Those were quite impressive results there, and has since been nominated for Premier League Manager of the Month. So, good start to the campaign for Tottenham. Albeit that I predicted they will finish 7th, I wouldn't be surprised if they do perform better than that, but it remains my prediction for them. Number 8, we had Aston Villa, who, also have had a fair start to the campaign. They've recorded some good results, beating up against Burnley, beating up against Everton, but have lost 2 out of those 4, losing to Newcastle and losing to Liverpool. So, but still, I do think they did start well the campaign, especially that knowing that they had engagements in Europe with Hibernian there. Side they managed to beat home and away, I think by 5-0, and then by 3-0 there to cement their place in the UEFA Conference League for this season. So, number 9 was Newcastle. Newcastle has had a tough start to the season, not just in terms of fixtures on paper, but what we expect of them. They've lost games to Liverpool, they've lost to Brighton, and they've lost to Man City. Now, these are teams that you expect they would lose to, or that would manage to beat up against them, but you would think also on another day they could have picked a result, maybe a draw on any of those 3 teams. But it was never to be, so they've only recorded 1 victory. That is for match day 1, beating up against Aston Villa by 5-1. before losing to Man City, goal to nil, losing to Liverpool 2-1, and then losing to Brighton by 3-1. Ivan Ferguson scoring a hat-trick in that one. So they've had a very bad start to the season, let's be honest, and their worry of the Champions League draw didn't help in terms of that result booking. I think being booked in Group F along with AC Milan, PSG, and Borussia Dortmund, so it will be a tough group for them to have those engagements in the Champions League and then return to the Premier League and expect to put similar results on board. So let's wait and see how the season will go. Will it be better than we think it is? My prediction is still 9th. I wouldn't be surprised if it's worse than that. Or Ed Howe is one of the first managers that are sacked in the course of this current season. But we will wait and see how that goes. On the other side, we'll also add Brentford. Number 10, Brentford have had a fair start to the season. They managed to beat up against Fulham by 3-0, share the spoils with Spurs and with Crystal Palace, and I think Bournemouth there. So not too bad for Thomas Frank. Now down to relegation. Everton kicked off the season very, very poorly. We did not predict they would be among the bottom three, but they do find themselves down there along with Burnley. But still, I will maintain that Luton will be relegated, Sheffield United. Now, it is that 18th place where I predicted Nottingham Forest that could change. Could it be Everton? Could it be Burnley? Now, remember, in our predictions, we had predicted that Burnley would be the dark horse of the season. But the start to the season has been far from that prediction. They've lost 3 out of 3. And there is a game they didn't play that was supposed to be against Luton Town. That's why they are counting 3 Premier League matches after 4 match days. So they've lost against Man City, they've lost against Aston Villa, and against Tottenham. And these with big scores, because losing to Manchester City 3-0 was pretty much expected, but losing 5-2 against Tottenham was a big defeat. And then losing 4-1 to Aston Villa was another bad result for them, for Vincent Kompany. So Burnley have been far from what we expected of them in terms of being the dark horse, losing with those big margins of 5-2 to Tottenham, 4-1 to Aston Villa, 3-0 to Man City. That was pretty expected. We don't know how perhaps they had played their game against Luton Town, maybe they would have managed to pick a point there, or even perhaps win it all. We'll wait to see. Sheffield United, yes, they've also lost some of their games, but I still think they will be relegated. Crystal Palace is one of those sides that have surprised us in the way they've started the season, beating up against Wolves by 3-2, beating up against Sheffield United by 0-0, losing to Arsenal, which was expected, and then sharing the spoils with Brentford by 1-1. So, but it looks like Roy Hodgson has his things together, his house together. They're managing to pick up good results there. They've been one of the good sides in the start of this campaign. So that's it all from the Football Tribe. Thank you for watching. Keep your eyes glued to the channel as we will be bringing you more from the world of football, especially in the Premier League as the season goes on. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Now, when you hit that subscribe button, do not forget to turn your notifications on so that you can be notified once we put out content. So, see you next time.